everyone, and welcome to our first ever episode of Teaching Unpacked Stories from the Classroom. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Before we begin, though, I want to just take a moment to thank our sponsors for this event, which are Peter and Molly Eppig. The generosity of their gift has allowed us to offer this 7-webinar series. And so we're very excited and very grateful. I will be one of your hosts along with Tom Julius. So I'm going to let Tom go ahead and introduce himself, and then we'll get going.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to have you with us today. I am, along with Laura, a faculty member at Antioch University, New England. Prior to that, I was an early elementary classroom teacher for 17 years.
Wow. How did I not know that? I knew you'd been a classroom teacher, but I didn't know for that long. And I'm Laura Thomas. I'm the director of the Experienced Educators Program at Antioch and also the director of the Center for School Renewal. And this is my, I think, 18th year at Antioch. Before that, I spent about 10 years as an English speech and theater and debate teacher in high school in the Midwest and also out here. So that's enough about us. I want to take just a minute. Tom, if you want to go ahead and advance the slide. That's Tom and I. You want to go forward one more? To just talk about some housekeeping details. First of all, I want to thank a couple of other people. Harold Hale, who is behind the scenes today, dealing with any technical issues that you have. If you have technical issues today, if you drop them into the chat, Harold will help you sort those out. If you have questions about the content of what we're talking about, if you can use the Q&A function. I do see that some of you are on the phone as well, so I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle questions from you, but you are welcome to contact us and we will connect you with Danica if you have any questions. I also would want to thank Peg Smeltz and Shelley Viles, two of our wonderful administrative folks at Antioch. They're the folks who have helped set today up and who are the folks that you may have been in contact with as you registered or as you were looking for more information about today. Our agenda is that we'll have Danica tell her story, and then Tom and I will talk about it with Danica, and we'll hopefully add in some questions that you have as well as we go along. So Tom, do you want to introduce Danica?
Yeah, I have had the pleasure and privilege of knowing Danica Tyminski for many years. Visited in her classroom, and I can tell you personally that her students care about each other, they're productive, and they're engaged in meaningful work. But here's the thing, classroom environments, effective classroom environments, don't just happen by chance. It takes kind of intentional design by the teacher for a group of students to develop into a community of learners. And so that's why when we started to talk about this webcast series, Danica came to mind as somebody that we knew we wanted to talk to and knew that she would be a great person to have as our premiere episode. So Danica, welcome to Teaching Unpacked, and thank you for being our first guest.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see so many people that I love and admire in the participant group. It's fun. So thanks for tuning in. All right, well, so I'm Danica Tyminski, and I have been teaching for 24 years now. I started teaching outdoor ed at the YMCA camping services in San Diego. I have also taught kindergarten. I taught 3rd through 8th grades. I taught in the emergency shelter system in San Diego. I've also taught graduate courses at Antioch for teachers. I currently teach 6th grade at Swift River School in New Salem, Massachusetts. and I can't tell you how much I love working there. We are a rural school that's surrounded by really beautiful forests, and we're very close to the Quabbin Reservoir. We're Title I school, and we currently serve 146 students. We teach pre-K through 6, and we have only one classroom per grade level. This year, my own daughter is in my class, which is definitely a fun experience. Typically, we have anywhere between 15 and 24 students in a classroom. So since it's Teacher Appreciation Week, I wanted to give a major shout out to the staff at Swift River School. I'm so grateful to work side by side with a team of people who hold love at the center of our purpose. A few years ago, we adopted the hashtag Small School Big Heart, and it is the perfect descriptor of our school. Our staff consistently goes above and beyond to ensure the well-being of our families. And our commitment goes beyond the walls of the school and way past that 3 o'clock bell. We're dedicated to supporting our families in any and every way, and we genuinely cherish our students. So I just wanted to offer my most heartfelt gratitude to the entire team. Thank you so much for everything you do. All right, so the other day, Tom and I were talking, and he asked me, what's an example from your classroom that demonstrates the power of community building? And it really caught me off guard. I consider community building to be my jam. So to narrow it down to just one example felt really tricky. I mulled over some ideas, and I landed on one of my favorite moments of the year, which is the 6th grade Giver Film Challenge. So at the beginning of each 6th grade year, we start with a unit on dystopian novels. And in late fall, we read The Giver by Lois Lowry. We dive in pretty deep. We reenact the ceremony of 12. We write hysterical narratives about what school would be like if all of the rules were abolished. We journal about the ways our opinions of the community change over time. Once we finish the book, they're presented with the film challenge. So they're broken into teams of about five, 6 students, and they're tasked with turning the novel into a 3-minute film. In their teams, they start by brainstorming the most essential scenes. So if you look at that photo in the top left, that is what they're doing there. They're getting their brainstorm on. And then they write a screenplay. They design the props, which you can see in the photo on the right. We collaborated with the art teacher, and they had some time to work on their props in art class. They rehearse, they film, and then they edit their scenes using iMovie. The pictures at the bottom, the one on the sled is the infamous final scene of the book. And we were lucky this year, that photo's from this year, we had snow, but in some previous years, we haven't had snow, and they are sledding down the dirt, and you make it work. The other photo is the sharing of feelings around the dinner table that the family has to do. So my instructional assistant, Birdie, and I, we rotate through the groups to assist if necessary, but our main goal is really to stay out of their way and to let them work through each step with as much independence as possible. Finally, the films are done. This year, I think it took about 3 weeks for this project to finish up. We celebrate, and we have a film festival complete with a red carpet and popcorn. They watch each film twice, the first time just for pure enjoyment, and the second time is to analyze it as a team. Each team offers the filmmaking team 3 stars and a wish. So they talk about 3 things that they think that the film team did really well, and then 1 suggestion that they would have for improvement. We finish by debriefing the challenge as a whole and brainstorming ways that we can be even more successful in the next challenge. So how does this challenge demonstrate the power of community building? Well, without the intentional work of explicitly teaching students how to be strong collaborators, communicators, and to take ownership of their learning, this challenge would be a disaster. Do difficulties arise during the process? You better believe it. We are talking about 11-year-olds self-directing a monster assignment. Do they have disagreements? Yup. Do they have breakdowns of communication? They sure do. But what they also have are tools to work through it and the knowledge that no matter what, we've got each other's backs. So today, I thought that I would share the process that we use to build community at the very beginning of the year that allows us to really cement ourselves as a strong team. So I'm gonna like move back in time to the very first day of school. Excuse me. So on the very first day, we do something called an expectations carousel. And I learned this technique from Maura Hart while working on my master's back in 2006 at Antioch. And I'm thrilled that she's here watching today. Hi, Maura. I have used this technique in every single first day of class, from third graders to graduate students. If they've been with me on a first day, they have participated in this process. Before the students arrive for the first day, I pose questions around the room. I use big chart paper. Some questions are hung up on the walls or on the windows. Some are laid out on tables. And students are grouped randomly and they rotate through adding their responses to each question. Before we begin, we talk about what brainstorming is, the notion that all ideas are valid, and the fact that spelling and grammar don't count because that always makes kids nervous. The kids pick a person to be a scribe, or they can take turns, whatever works best for them. So I pose the following questions that are on this slide, and we take about 2 minutes per question. If they see that when they get to a page that they agree with the response that's already been given, they can just add a star or a check mark to that one. Once the groups have answered all of the questions, we reconvene to look at everyone's ideas as a whole group. One of my favorite questions on this list is, what can happen if you resist learning? And I'm the first to share with them that I have been in classes before that I just don't want to be in. I mean, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. That PD that you didn't volunteer for, but you were voluntold to attend. I'm hoping that's not how you're feeling right now. I tell them that I know the feeling where you throw up a wall and you check out and you refuse to participate. We've all been there. We talk about the effects that this can have on our learning. And for some of us, this reaction that we have then becomes a habit, and it can be really hard to transition out of it. On the flip side, we think about what can happen if we embrace learning and we try to make that our habit. So we have some really deep discussions on that very first day about the way we're approaching our learning and our jobs together. The next step is we do something called the gives to get. I ask the students, what are you willing to give to yourself, to your classmates, to your teachers, to get the very most out of our year together? They shout out their ideas while I furiously write them down, and they tend to say things like, they will give me their focus or their kindness or their best listening, their best effort, they'll meet deadlines. Once we compile the list, they give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if they agree that they can do their best to give these things to the class. If there is a thumbs down, and it's only happened once, we talk about the concern, and then we either find a way to edit the give to get, or we come to a compromise. So after that part, Bertie and I share with them what we are willing to give them to help get the most out of our year together. So we read through this list together, and then finally we get to the last one that says unconditional love. And that one might seem a little strange to hear, especially in our very first day together. Usually when we get that, I get some kind of side eyes from some of the students. And I share with them a concept that I learned from Alex Chevron-Bennett in her trauma-informed teaching workshop. And that's Carl Rogers' concept of unconditional positive regard. So I read the statement to them out loud. I care about you. You have value. You don't have to do anything to prove it to me, and nothing you do will change my mind. And then I read it out loud one more time while slowly looking around and making eye contact with each kiddo. I care about you. You have value. You don't have to do anything to prove it to me, and nothing you do will change my mind. This concept has completely revolutionized the way I work with kids. Of course, I always love them, but I never directly explain that to them. Now, I'm super upfront. I help them understand that there might be days when we disagree, or when I'm not super stoked with the choices that they're making. It won't change how I feel about them as humans. I will love them no matter what. After that, we get to something called the non-negotiables, which are the expectations of the classroom that are not up for debate. The only one that ever kind of catches them by surprise, again, is the last one, which says 0 tolerance for put downs. Put downs, including those prefaced or ended with, I'm just joking, those aren't allowed in the classroom. We really work hard to build each other up, and put downs just aren't a part of that. After that, after school that day, I type up all the responses to the entire process, and I turn it into a contract that I can share with families so that they get a glimpse into how our expectations take shape. It also becomes a document that we can refer back to throughout the year, and if we want to tweak it as we go, we can certainly do that. After we finish the carousel, we immediately transition into team building. Now, I know most classrooms do team building of some sort, I would hope, at the beginning of the year, maybe the first day, maybe the first week. But we have dedicated weekly time throughout the entire year to continue working on team building. During these challenges, students learn to trust one another, to take risks, and how to communicate with respect and kindness. Sometimes team building can be woven into academics. If you look at the picture on the top left, that was part of an engineering and design challenge that we do the first week of school, where teams of 4 students are given materials and asked to create the tallest tower that they can build that will support a golf ball at the top that doesn't hang lower than 20% of the total tower. The other photos represent team building challenges that aren't connected to academics. In the top right, you'll see that there are strings attached to a marker, and the students have to work together to move the marker to write a word of their choice. On the bottom left is my all-time favorite team building activity called group skis, where the students have to be in sync in order to move a certain distance across the gym or out on the field. The photo in the middle is a group cup stack. So you have a rubber band that's attached to strings, and they have to work together to manipulate the elastic over the cup and then lift it up onto the pyramid and build their pyramid. If groups are good at that, then we also have them take it apart. And then we did one time where we had everybody except for one person was blindfolded. And then, so there was only one person who was kind of helping them navigate it as they went. So the cool thing about it is, depending on where your students are, you can up the challenge or lower the challenge to make sure that they're getting what they need. And then the final photo on the bottom right is just kind of a twist on the old group knot, where everybody kind of holds hands and makes a knot. I cut jump ropes up, and I use lengths of jump ropes. It makes it a little bit easier to maneuver, and let's not forget, these are 11-year-olds and they don't really want to hold hands. So it kind of takes that piece out of it. We continue these challenges throughout the year, which allows us to connect in new ways and have fun, and it also strengthens our interpersonal skills. Another important element of our process in community building is creating quality criteria. So we use this when working with both team building and academic challenges. The students are taught how to create and apply quality criteria to their process and also to their work. And it allows them to have a voice, which increases ownership. It clearly defines, they're able to clearly define and understand the expectations. And it also raises their standards of excellence, because when you ask a student to design their own expectations, they tend to be higher than I would set, which is kind of neat. Reflection is also a key component of 6th grade. We use a debriefing process that I call plus delta. So on the plus side, we list everything that went well, the things that helped us to be most successful. And then delta is the mathematical symbol for change. So on that side, we list what we would do differently next time. We use this technique to debrief team building challenges, academic challenges, sometimes group interactions. And as we proceed through the year, students end up taking over the responsibility, and they begin to facilitate the debriefing sessions for themselves, which is pretty neat. During the second week of school, the students work together to write a mission statement for a class. So first they come up with a team name, and in the past few years, let's see, I've had the Creative Warriors, Team Tenacious, I had them for 2 years because I got to be with them in 5th and 6th grade. Thrive Tribe, the Driven Dreamers, and then this year's team is the Spunky Sparks, which is the perfect name for them. Next, they write independently what they want our class to be known for and what our goals should be. We then share those out, and they work in small groups to write statements representing that discussion. Finally, we weave those statements and ideas together into the mission that is a reflection of the class as a whole. So this mission statement that you're seeing, this is our statement from this year. So in the third week of school, we head to Sargent Center in New Hampshire for a week of Nature's Classroom. And for many of my students, it is their first time away from home. I will say that taking a week out of my life and away from my family is not easy, but it's definitely worth it. The time that we spend there together helps us to form a lasting bond like none other. The mission statement that we created becomes the heart of our work while we're there, and it's a compass to guide our purpose. Each day while we're there, a few staff members drive up from Swift River and join us in our activities. In the top left picture, you can see two of our teachers, Chris and Bertie, scaling the rock wall like champions. So when grown-ups show up like this, those deeper personal connections are forged, and students see that adults might also get scared when they're 40 feet off the ground and about to step off the zipline platform. But the support and encouragement that we experience there is priceless. So as I was saying before, it's essential that community building isn't just taught in the first week of school and then checked off the list like, yep, I'm done with that. It needs to be an evolving aspect of our classroom all year. So this slide is an example of a debrief that we did in the middle of the year just to reflect on where we've been and where we wanted to go. It's helpful to keep everybody on the same page. It eases transitions, after maybe a longer vacation. It helps everyone kind of get back into the groove, and it can help you iron out any wrinkles that have popped up. So each of these examples are the building blocks that support our students in learning how to work together successfully. I feel like often teachers expect students to collaborate and then are super frustrated when it all falls apart. But instead of throwing up our hands and saying, yeah, my students, they just can't do that, I would encourage us to look at how we're teaching them to be compassionate and positive group members. And they will excel if they're shown the path. And so that's what I wanted to share today.
Danica, thank you so much. What a treasure trove of teacher strategies you just kind of went through. I just, as you were talking, I was kind of keeping track, and we had everything from the carousel to the gives to get to non-negotiables, the contract, team building activities, quality criteria, debriefing, the mission statement. This is what it kind of occurs to me is I can't tell you how many classrooms I've been in, and I'm sure I've been guilty of this myself, where at the first day of the school, they make some class rules, and the kids have some input in the class rules, and you tape those rules up, near the ceiling, and then they basically just collect dust for the rest of the year. And I think what you've given us a sense of is how building community in a classroom isn't just a singular event, but that it's really about activities throughout the year. It's really, that the classroom rules is a living document. And can you talk about a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's nice because we refer to it the whole year, and as kind of our dynamic changes, or if new students are moving in and joining the class, we're able to tweak things and change things. But yeah, it kind of becomes the heart of our classroom.
Yeah, so Tom, can you jump forward a slide? Because I think, don't we have the stairway? Yep, there we have the stair steps. So Danica, I'm wondering, you mentioned before that, it's this ongoing thing that you work with all the time. And you mentioned sort of in passing that you revisit those norms, like after a vacation or whatever. And I know that some of the folks that are with us today will recognize these stairs as the model that we use for the development of a collaborative learning community. But I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about how what you just described is reflected in this image of these stairs.
Yeah, I feel like when we first come to the classroom together, and you have to remember that the students I'm working with, the majority of them have been together for 8 or 9 years because it's only one classroom per grade, and so they've been kind of moving up together. But even with that, I find that sometimes they don't have really deep knowledge about each other. And so that's where we're starting, is the getting to know you, the learning about each other, learning about how the classroom works. And then we move into that realm of how do we really communicate with each other respectfully and with compassion and with kindness. And from there, we're able to successfully cooperate, which is, I feel like cooperation is different from collaboration because it's like, it's the foundation of collaboration, but it's not as strong, and it doesn't involve as much trust as collaboration. And then we're able to build that community. But again, if something has happened where maybe trust has been broken in the group, you move back a few stairs. And then you have to get together and figure out how you're going to work to get back up to that community level.
Yeah. I always think about it that the difference between cooperation and collaboration is that cooperation is really the tacit agreement not to get in each other's way. Like, I'm not going to help you, but I'm also not going to keep you from doing what you need to do. Where collaboration is, how can I help you? How can you help me? We're equally invested in the success of everyone in the group. And it feels like it's a small thing, but you can almost feel it in the classroom when kids make that leap, when adults make that leap between cooperation and collaboration. And it's like everything hits on all cylinders all of a sudden once they make that jump. And before that, it's a little bit like we're all just sort of trying, we're going through the motions, but we're sort of awkwardly bumping up against each other, sort of like a bumblebee trapped inside a window. And then suddenly it just works. And it's the difference between those two things.
Yeah.
Well, and I can see where in a challenge as complex as the Giver Film Fest that you started off with, Danica, where you were saying that, in order to accomplish this kind of size of a real problem that the students have to engage in, that in order to do that, without getting to that collaboration phase, there'd be a lot more of the teacher involved and a lot less of the student involved.
Yeah.
So there are a few questions that I want to jump over to if I can. Is that okay? Tom, is that okay? So the first one comes from Cheryl. She's talking about what you said about zero tolerance for put downs, that she's had a really difficult time this year with her students doing this. And she's done a lot of these same techniques because she says, because you're an awesome teacher, which I think means she was in one of your classes. But she's still getting a lot of put downs and negativity from her students, and she's not sure how to deal with that because she's telling them zero tolerance, but they're still doing it.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes when those things bubble up, I just check in with a kid, and instead of coming from a place of like, you can't do that, instead I just kind of get down to their level and I say, are you okay? How can I help? Because sometimes when kiddos are being negative, or they may be giving the put downs in terms of like trying to be funny or get negative attention, there's almost always something deeper going on. And so I try to really connect with the kids and find out what's going on, and kind of connect with them at a deeper level so that hopefully we can move through that. It's definitely not easy, but I don't approach it from like, that's one of our rules, we don't do that, because kids are like, eh.
Yeah.
But
that reminds me of the point you were making earlier about unconditional positive regard, which I think many of us, maybe all of us, go to the classroom with that in mind. We have that at heart. And I think that one of the things that you're making me think about, Danica, is how you make that explicit. You talked about, that you can have that as your goal, but until you start to make a lot of these things clear and evident and explicit to the children, the students, we may be just kind of assuming that they see it and know what we want, but it's really kind of, it's making that, it's really bringing that clear to them that I think contributes to that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, Cheryl followed up again with another point that it's about 6 or 8 boys that do this to each other a lot. And I do have to say this is something that I've seen a lot, especially with that age group and boys. And it's almost a cultural thing among boys of a certain age. And I see it more now than I did when I was teaching full-time in high school. Now I'm teaching 1 day a week in an elementary school, but I still see it a lot in that age group. And it's almost like it's a way of like, I know he's my friend because he says terrible things about me. And I feel like there's a way in which there's a masculinity to it that's really, it's unhealthy. And so being able to talk about that in a developmentally appropriate way is tricky. It's hard. And I almost wonder if to some degree it's one of those things that we teach and teach and teach and teach and teach, and we don't ever see it learned. Like it soaks in beyond us. So the fact that every time they do it, you come back with, we don't do that in here. Like, what's going on? You take it seriously. You address it over and over and over again to the exhaustion of everyone involved. Just eventually it soaks in like, oh, she really means this. Like, this is her thing. This is going to bug her. I'm not going to do that because it's going to become a problem for everybody. But I do think it speaks to sort of a larger cultural thing right now.
Yeah, I had a crew of girls who was doing it, and we ended up just having a lunch together, and each kiddo had a piece of paper, and I asked them to write one thing that they appreciated about each of the girls on the piece of paper, and it rotated around. And then finally they got to their own page and they had to write something that they were proud of themselves for the year. And it was fascinating to see that they didn't have any problems writing about the other people. But as soon as it got to having to think about themselves and say something nice about themselves, it was like they were stumped. And so it was good to then have that space to talk about that. Like, why is it hard to say nice things about ourselves? And what is it about like saying negative things about each other, even though you're telling me you're not serious and that you're just joking? Like, how is that making you, is it making you feel better? Is it making you feel like a bigger person? Is it helping you, does your friend trust you more when you say things like that? So just kind of really talking about it in a deeper way.
Yeah.
Well,
Another question.
You're making me, Danica, think about how it sounds like you're naming the behavior without making them feeling shamed. Naming without shaming, in a sense.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that, Tom. I'll write that down.
So there are 2 questions that I'm going to fold together because they're very similar. That asking about how this fits in with families, and is this a whole school process, and how do you share the process with families, and does it begin with kindergarten? Is it specialists? How does this whole thing fit together?
Yes. So this process right now is not school-wide. Right now it's in my classroom. My school as a whole, I think, does kind of versions of this. In every room, kids are involved in making expectations. But it's not, they don't do these exact same things. This isn't like a school-wide mandate. This is just how my classroom works because of what I learned at Antioch. And then in terms of families, when we have open house, I usually talk about critical skills, and I talk about my classroom and how my classroom is a little bit different. And then with that contract that I send home at the beginning of the year, that's a really clear way for families to see how it works.
Mm-hmm. And great. Okay, so you answered that, sorry. But the small school, big heart thing, that is school-wide.
Yes, for sure, yep.
And so when the kids get to you, they've already had some, I mean, this has sort of set the culture for them, right, all the way through?
Yeah, our school our school is really a different place to work. We're very, very small. Our kiddos have known each other for a long time, and we really are concerned about them, and we love them deeply, and we want to help our families out as much as we can. And that it really does extend outside of the classroom. Like we're concerned about the well-being of our families. We have teachers who've gone with families to Boston to help advocate during medical appointments, or, we help with groceries. There's all kinds of things. And so, we hold love, and we hold the needs of the child and the family really in the center of our work.
And some of the ways that I've seen that happen in large schools is creating teams within the school, so that if you're in a sixth grade, there might be opportunities for a sixth grade to be involved with a first, second, third, fourth, fifth grades, and those teachers, so they have some awareness and knowledge and some of the other people in the school, so that it's the big school becomes more like a small school kind of feel.
Yeah, we have reading buddies that we do once a week, where older students are paired up with younger students. So I believe you become a reader once you hit third grade. That's the big year of being a grown-up kid. So third graders work with kindergartners, and fourth graders work with preschoolers, and fifth grade is with second grade, and then sixth grade is with first grade. And so as they've come up, they've all gotten to work with the different classrooms and visit and with the different kids. And then every Friday, we come together for 30 minutes in the morning and have community sing. And that's the entire school sitting in the cafeteria on the floor. And our awesome music teacher, Mr. Cortina, leads us in song and dance, and it's joyful. And even now, when we are not at school together, he still leads community sing virtually for us every Friday morning. And I'm always so sad when it's over, because it's really the best time of my week right now.
Wow, so that's such a great way. When older kids work with the younger kids, they really transmit the culture in a very visceral way. Like, this is the way we do things here. This is what it means to be a good student, to be a good part of this community. They model that in a way that is so much more powerful than anything you could say could ever communicate.
And sixth graders really cherish that idea of being a role model. That's something that they really internalize and want to kind of exhibit.
So there are a couple of questions here asking about how you fund Nature's Classroom. What would you do if you were in a school that couldn't do Nature's Classroom? What would be the option what are the important things you would do? I wonder if you could give a couple minutes to that.
Yes. So Nature's Classroom is, I joke that it's my second full-time job to help fundraise. Right now, it's the cost is about $400 per child. We ask families to pay half of that, and then we work our tails off all year to fundraise to raise the other half. Examples of ways we fundraise: we do candy bar bingo, which is everybody's favorite. You play bingo, but instead of winning money, you win candy bars. Very fun. We do spaghetti dinners, we do baked potato bars, we have a monster dash, a Halloween party, what else do we do? We do a pancake breakfast. I mean, there's a lot. Every other year we do a letter writing campaign where we write letters to local businesses. But again, our community is really small. And so we don't do that every year, because we'd be hitting up the same people, and that feels hard.
So if a school couldn't go to Nature's Classroom, what would be the thing that you would want them to try to do in place of that if they couldn't?
Yeah, so we only started going to Nature's Classroom, I think this is our 4th year this year. So before we went, I just did more team building. Really, the first 6 weeks of school is really, really heavy on community building. And so if you can't go away for something like that, I would really encourage you to look at things like Project Adventure and those other kinds of initiative team building activities to see what you could incorporate into your classroom.
So that, hearing you talk about that makes me wonder, Danica, what thoughts you have about, so in this time of remote support and remote learning, all the community building that you did when the students were there in person, do you see that playing out now in?
I do. So virtual learning has been really hard for my class. I have a large percentage of kiddos who have really spotty availability of internet, and some who don't have internet or cell phone service where they live. And it's not just that they don't have access to a hotspot or whatever, like the actual infrastructure for having the internet does not exist where they live. So that is a challenge. I have to say though, the other day on Google Classroom, I logged in and one of the students had created the only thing I can call it is a slideshow of love. And she just said, I miss everyone so much that I created this for you. And when you present, it's like this animated, beautiful slideshow, just like hearts falling from the sky about how much she misses everybody. And I, like, of course I started to weep. But I think that shows, like even when we're not apart, this crew is really feeling connected still. And I'm doing everything I can to try to hold on to that while they're away from each other.
So Danica, I wonder if you could talk about that for just a minute, because there are a couple of questions from folks asking what you're able to do to maintain community right now.
Yeah, so we are attempting to have Google Meet sessions. The other day I did have 13 out of 20 log in, which was a minor miracle. During that time, at this point, I'm not focused on academics when I'm doing my Google Meets. I'm really focused on checking in on kids, having them be able to chat with each other. Last time we played categories. So my concern is that if I go heavy on academics when we're meeting like that, they're not going to log in because it's so hard to log in already that I want them to be really motivated. So that's how we're trying to do it. I'm writing letters, lots of handwritten letters to students. I do a newsletter where I'm including photos of the kids and what they're doing at home. So each week there's different pictures of different kids. It's hard. It's hard.
Well, that sounds like you're utilizing those knowledge and communication steps, even in the remote situation we're in, that you're continuing those knowledge and communication steps. Not just assuming that because you did it back at the beginning of the year, it's still going to apply, but actually finding ways to reinforce those knowledge and communication steps so that they still feel connected.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And it's interesting because you're making me think about a school administrator that I heard talking about our current situation. And she was saying that, if we get that before remote learning can happen, we have to get the remote support right. That without the remote support, forget the learning. And it sounds like that's really kind of where you're at with trying to make sure that the students have the things they need and feel supported so that then the learning can happen.
Yeah.
I think similar to the staircase model, in that, without the knowledge and communication, you're not going to get to that cooperation, collaboration, community stage.
Yeah. I when we first started out with remote learning, our school took the kind of the journey of this is optional. Our first concern is your well-being. Here's some options of things you can do, but right now we really want to make sure that your families are okay. And then recently when Governor Baker kind of mandated that we needed to keep teaching in terms of remote learning, I don't know if he was really considering how hard that is for kids who don't have technology or the internet. I'm hearing about schools where they send Chromebooks home with every kid. Well, that is incredible, and we can't do that. So this last 2 weeks ago, I made binders for every kiddo that had kind of tabulated options for things that they could do. I sent home 2 different novels with novel units that they could kind of self-guide themselves through. Right now I'm doing one-on-one meetings. I'm setting up one-on-one meetings to either talk on the phone or do a video meet with every single kid so I can just see how their work is going through the week, what have they gotten accomplished, what do they need help on. But it's really, we have to be pretty creative where we live to try to figure out how to do this in a meaningful way that also isn't overwhelming and stressful. But the inequities of the entire situation sit like a pit in my stomach.
Yeah, that's really well said, Danica. So there are a couple more questions, but I know that we're also bumping up against the end of our time. So if it's okay with you, Danica, what I'll do is send you these questions, and maybe if you have a little time to write answers to them, we can drop them in the resources page.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, there is a document that I just dropped into the chat that it's a listing of everything that Danica's mentioned. It is links to all kinds of stuff. If you're on the phone, fear not, because you will be getting that by email. That's why we had you register the way we had you register, so that we could reach back out to you with a link to both the resources, and you'll also get this link that Tom's just brought up on the slide that is our evaluation. When you fill that out, at the end, it will take you to a page where you can download a certificate of participation. I know there are some folks who still have to have their professional development hours for research. So if you want that, you can get that at that point. But we would ask that, we're going to hold your certificate hostage to a brief evaluation, so that we can gather a little data and figure out what folks want to hear about.
So there's that where the resources can be found, and you put that in the chat, you just said, Laura.
Yeah, I dropped that in the chat too, in case folks just wanted to click on it. The recording of today's session will be on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/criticalskills1. There is also a lot of other stuff there that I find fascinating, but mostly because it's my YouTube channel. So of course, I think everything there is fabulous.
There's a lot there about critical skills from all over the world, actually. Videos there.
Yes, there is. And Tom, do you have any last thoughts before we let everybody go?
Well, I just wanted to point out that we've referred a few times to the critical skills model, which is an instructional model developed at Antioch University, New England, by teachers all around the country and internationally. And in upcoming webcast series, we'll be talking more about different aspects of the model. Building community is one important part. And the model identifies these 9 characteristics. And Danica, I think really today, you really helped us think about these 2 in particular, the way in which students take responsibility for and ownership of their learning and for the classroom community, and how in order to make that happen, teachers design, mediate, coach, and support the learning process. And you've just given us a terrific example of how that's not a one-off event, but really something that a teacher does throughout the year. So thank you so much. Laura, do you want to say a word about upcoming webcasts?
Yes, you want to jump forward to that? So next time, 2 weeks from today, same time, we will be joined by Natalie Stotz, who is who is fabulous. And Natalie is going to be talking to us about a little bit about authentic experiential lesson design. Natalie is like a one-woman show at her school. She teaches everything in different levels, and she's in this little school that has all these great ideas. And so she'll be talking about that, and specifically how she designs her lessons for the beginning of the year to the end of the year. How does she keep things sort of interesting and fresh and challenging without going too far? So you will, if you're registered, you will get another link to register for this event. And once again, it'll be free, same format, but it'll be a different web address. So be sure to register for this one separately.
And forward it to your friends.
And forward it to your friends, definitely.
And keep in touch.
Yeah. And all that information about where we are on Twitter and Instagram and my contact information and Tom's contact information is all available on that resources page. So if there's something that you want that you didn't see, you can get in touch with us there, and we can help you locate anything that you might need. So I don't think I have anything else. Tom, do you?
I think that's all for now, except to
Danica,
say once again, thank you so much, Danica.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so fabulous and for being willing to do this first. So thank you for joining us, and be in touch if there's anything at all that we can do to help you.
See everybody next time.
Bye.